And so the first question, take an anonymous question or anonymous statement type thing from the PhD quiz. So, is the lack of financial support one of the biggest problems PhD researchers face?
I mean, depends what you define as a problem. I'd say the finances behind. Listen, the finances behind the PhD, we don't get. People who don't know, PhDs don't get taxed. You get your PhD stipend.
It's a bursary, isn't it, basically?
It's a bursary, so you get your stipend, whatever it, and they differ depending on what PhD you're doing, who you're funded by. It could be the minimum, what's the minimum these days? 17k? Is it with inflation? 16k?
Nah.
What do we get per
is
year?
it stipend or just...
Stipend, what's the minimum stipend?
I'm on the minimum stipend, so...
Same, so what...
Let me tell you now. Oh, we're doing maths on the fly here,
we're doing maths on the fly.
17 and a half-ish.
Yeah, I know. So it's about 17 and a half grand the minimum. And it can go up to, like, I've seen some getting advertised like a 20 grand PhD. Only in private industry.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So someone offering a higher wage, you're doing a PhD through a private company. The finances are a problem, but, and this sounds like I'm not blaming, like, we do need more finance. I have complained about it before, like it's out of order, that like we're doing all, and it's a lot of work, a PhD, lads, and then at the end of the month to only get, you know, your pay packet with 1,400 quid in, and it's like, is that what it'd work out per month, is it? 1,400?
1,450, 1,470, something
you
like
do look at other people who haven't gone down a PhD route, and you think like, you know, why are you doing this? But everyone who's done a PhD goes in knowing
that's the game.
That's the game. And I'm not saying that's right, but it's not like anyone's entered a PhD and then we're like, well, what the fuck, 1,400 quid this month? I thought I was getting 4 grand. Like, no one's ever done that. I think it puts a lot of people off, Belly. I think
I agree.
I've heard of a lot of people, I think we were discussing it before, who, when I've told them I'm doing a PhD and what I'm earning, like close mates and that, they can't quite get their heads around why I'm doing it.
People go to me, they go, "Are you still in uni?" I'm like, "Yeah," and then I'll tell them, and they're like, "Is that it?" But then also, I know people who work in other jobs. I say they work in law as a paralegal, and they earn about the same as us.
It is.
So it's like, is it? So basically, we earn. I think it's if we were on 20 odd K.
This is what
if we were going to get taxed.
I mean, you got to look at it from, you know, the wider community. Are we putting off people who are potentially, you know, giving into this conversation we had the weekend on the brain drain? Are we putting people off getting involved in academia, in law, because they know, well, I can just go down another route. It might not be what I want to do. It might not be your passion, but I'll get 30k, I'll get 40k, and like, you know, we should really, and I think PhDs should be on. I mean, I think putting a young doctor on 40k straight away, or I want to be doctor, they could lose sight of what they're doing.
Yes,
maybe,
if you say to a PhD, but then here's the issue: if you said to people, if you do a PhD program and your stipend's 40k a year, you'll get people doing a PhD
for 40k
who don't want to do a PhD,
and then they're not the best balanced people to do one.
So I get it, because it's one.
But the flip of that, Belly, is you shouldn't rely on someone's passion either. It shouldn't just be.
No, that's what I'm trying to say.
You're here because you love it, so we'll take advantage of you and throw you pennies. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's a hard one to traverse.
It's still not pennies.
No, it's not pennies, but it's not a lot, Belly.
So referring to the question, I do think it is an issue, but do I think is it the biggest issue PhD?
Depends what did he mean by? I mean, obviously,
like biggest problem a PhD.
That's stop entry points or make people quit. What's the issue that they're talking about?
That was the.
Well, if you're talking about what makes people quit, I don't think the finances.
It's the workload.
I think it'll be the workload, the motivation dwindles. People over 4 years can change a lot.
Yeah,
people,
like you're not necessarily the same.
Yeah, what people want to do at 21, 22, 23 is not what they might want to do at 25, 26. People drop out. Barrier to entry, I think it could be a big one, because I think people who genuinely do think about doing research and want a career in it, I think maybe when they look, especially if they've come from maybe more economically deprived areas, you know, they want to start earning money. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they've got this degree, whether it be maths, law, whatever it is. You know, they've done all this hard work, and if for someone to just offer the minimum wage, it's not worth it. They're like, although I love research, I'm just not prepared to
and
do
this
it.
is this is and I suppose again it depends on perspective, because like say if you're like kind of us where we came from undergrad and masters,
Yeah.
and then we've gone from having to pay for education to getting paid.
It feels decent.
So so for like like
we're happy. Yeah,
I'm happy. I'm kind of happy with the money because
same.
I kind of like academia anyway, so I'm kind of getting paid to.
I know what you mean. Like, yeah, like it what for us. We've been at uni our whole lives since we left school. Ryan had 1 year out, but pretty much been at uni, and we were paying the whole time to be there.
Yeah.
So as soon as it wasn't that, it felt good. You
And
know
then
what I mean?
but then the flip side, I think people who want to do a PhD later in life, I think it probably is the biggest problem, because
They're used to a wage.
like you're used to a certain way of living, and also when you get older, it's not so much even a certain way of living; it's just the natural kind of responsibility that come with getting older. Like
if
you've got bills
two
to
kids,
pay.
if you've got 2 kids and you're on 35k, you're not going to drop to 17, man.
It's not happening.
Because it's the welfare of your own children. You got to think about more. But I think, like, there's certain things people don't know about PhDs, which like might put people out. Like, you can't get a mortgage on a PhD.
But that's the thing, because like I'm saving at the minute, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And even you can't get one as a PhD because they'll go, no, you're a student. And even as a postdoc, it's the same kind of issue where it's, oh, you're on temporary money. But now we're getting into a whole other world of questions.
But no, it's a good. But I think it's something that needs addressing, because there's a lot of other young people who can get mortgage. I mean, getting a mortgage, I mean, that's another, in this climate, it's rock hard. But forget about that argument. There's people who are on normal jobs, and because it's a full-time contract,
even if it's potentially the same money take home, they can potentially get other things because it's seen as a
full-time work. But then there's benefits you get from being a PhD student, once they don't get, like freedom to work when you want, freedom to complete things at night, rather, you know, if as a PhD, if you want to work 5 p.m. to 2 a.m. and spend your morning doing whatever, like, you can. No one's gonna cry at you as long as you're doing your work and your research is good. You can complete your work when you want to complete your work.
I saw a nice quote from a researcher about that, and they were basically saying, like, look, as a researcher, we have to kind of accept we're not going to get the same money as industry, but what then you've got to do is make the most of the freedom you get and spend the freedom with
other things,
doing things that like people in industry can't do, type thing.
In your career, creating a profile, doing whatever you want to do.
So to bring it back then, close this kind of question off, is the lack of financial support one of the biggest problems for PhD researchers? I think it depends on
entry point,
entry point, but then again, I think it depends on perspective. Do you want to say what it is? Financial support, a big one for me, which gives me the fear, is that it runs out before, like, the amount of work you can be expected to do. You can, like, getting it done in your finance period. Can be impossible. Is basically no one finishes a PhD really
under the finance,
whilst you're still getting paid. So you have to kind of continue it afterwards,
I think
and that can be quite a daunting.
Is 4 years, and 3 years. Everyone's usually on 3 years, and the percentage of people who probably complete within 3 years is minimal.
No, and I reckon mine's on my kind of path. It's probably going to take me about 3 to 4 months, maybe, after me money runs out. I don't want it to, but that's what I'm kind of planning for. Because
you can't, like, that's life, man. You know what I mean? And
so then that's scary, I suppose, from the financial point. So you've got the entry point, but then also you've got kind of the exit point where it's a scary end, because you can be left in this kind of no man's land where you don't have the qualification, but you've got to finish it. You're over 3 years in, and you've got to try and find other sources of money and stuff.
I think entry point's a big put off. You're right. Entry point's a big put off. People see the minimum wage that a PhD students get, and as I say, I think if you've come from a more deprived area where money, you know, it might not be a put off for someone who's got a wealthy family and can, you know, get, you know, mummy or daddy to fund them while they're doing a PhD. But if you come from a deprived area and you haven't got that backing, and someone's only offering you minimum wage, and you know, because of your qualifications, you could possibly get 30, 40, 50, whatever, it's hard to sell to someone, and I get it. But as you say then, I think to improve the finances in a PhD, you know, the monthly stipend probably could be better, but I think it should, rather than a standard of 3 years, it should be a standard of 4 and 5. I think 4 to 5 years is like, it's a lot of work for a lot of people to do, man, and in 3 years, but anyway.
And also, it kind of highlights a bigger problem that there's not enough money being paid out to everyone in general, innit? Yeah. But yeah, so is the lack of financial support one of the biggest problems? Depends, but it can really be a big stifler.
Yeah.